Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Mi, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. In chapter 1059 of One Piece, we were introduced to the new marine fighting force created by the SSG. Small children who seem to be fully robots or at least some kind of mechanical thing, possessing incredibly tough skin as well as being the new version of the Pacifista. And aside from the fact that we saw how powerful they were, each one seems to have a different characteristic. And unlike the first Pacifista models that were identical in appearance to the revolutionary Kuma, these new things have a whole new look and maybe a whole new power set. These new models, referred to as the Seraphim, have the same appearance as the warlords, but so far we don't know how many Seraphim there are or what they all look like, which makes it possible that there could be Seraphim of important characters like the Straw Hats and even other Yonko. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the Seraphim, how powerful these little children have proven to be, what their powers are, and we'll also talk about the possibility that there could be Seraphim inspired by the Straw Hats, or they may be created in the future. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel or even if you've seen a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you consider leaving us a like or even subscribing and leaving us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content. And if you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or your favorite with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So my friends, during chapter 1059 of One Piece, the Seraphim were revealed during the Marines' attack on Amazon Lily, and they were there in an attempt to capture the former warlord Boa Hancock, and the Marines used their new weapons created by the SSG, which is an organization led by the mysterious and shadowy Vegapunk. In this chapter, there were two different Seraphim that were revealed, having the appearance of two of the former warlords. The first one in the chapter that appeared had their face in shadow, but by the end of the chapter we see that it is much more clearly the Seraphim with Boa Hancock's own face. The other Seraphim revealed in this chapter appeared during Teach's invasion of the island. He also had the same goal of the Marines, of course, to capture Boa Hancock, but he did it for his own ambition during the invasion of the island. But in his infiltration, Teach comes across a Seraphim that has the appearance of a young Mihawk, even possessing a mastery in swordplay, managing to cut down a large part of the island's mountain, and even Teach is surprised, if not terrified. While invading the island, the Seraphim Hancock, along with the Marines, manage to corner the Kuja pirates until Teach's pirate crew shows up and causes an even bigger mess on the island. However, these new intruders were also being repelled by the Seraphim Mihawk until Marshal D. Teach himself faced him. Now we don't know the outcome of this fight, but apparently Teach did manage to beat him, or at least stave him off. It's even possible that Teach was able to absorb the young Seraphim Mihawk with his darkness, because we didn't see him appear again after confronting Teach. But there's also a high probability that he's still alive, because at the end of the chapter it said that the Seraphim did not receive any damage and wasn't even scratched. During the battle, Marine Captain Kobe tried to also order the Mihawk Seraphim to retreat, as his attacks threatened to destroy the Marines petrified by Hancock's ability. At the conclusion of the battle, the Seraphim didn't seem to be around anymore, presumably because they could have been recalled, which means that none of them may have been destroyed, so we could soon see all of the existing Seraphim during some marine battle with pirates. What we do know so far about these powerful children is that the Seraphim are the new Pacifista units developed under the Marines' Special Science Group, also known as the SSG, led by the world's greatest scientist, Dr. Vegapunk. They were created with the intention of replacing the seven warlords as one of the three great powers, and for this reason they have very similar appearances to the former warlords themselves. But this also raises the question that if the SSG can create the Seraphim to look like our former warlords, why would they stop there? Could they have created Seraphim that look like other pirates? For example, the Straw Hats or even members of Shanks' crew, because maybe it might be easier because they don't use devil fruits. This terrifying thought would enable the SSG to create skilled Seraphim from Shanks, Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, Yasop, and so many other powerful pirates on the crew, making the Seraphim an even greater force to be reckoned with. Now, we don't know if these Seraphim could even use or have a high hockey level, but we do see that they seem to have some abilities, since Teach had to use his own hockey-coated arm to stop an attack by a Seraphim Mihawk. But if they ended up having hockey, we still wouldn't know if it's strong enough to compare with the hockey of, say, Shanks' crew, allowing the Seraphim of these pirates to be as strong as the originals. Now, whether the Seraphim are full robots or cyborgs, we don't know, but they are built to look like the child versions of former former warlords, but they do seem to have traits associated with the Lunarium tribe that would of course been acquired during their research with King, Kaido's right-hand man. Like the original pacifistas based on Bartholomew Kuma, the Seraphim units are cyborgs built on the image of an existing person, but in their case, they bear an uncanny resemblance to the former warlords, albeit at a much younger age. We also don't know if the other warlords who were expelled, like Moria, Crocodile, and even Doflamingo, have Seraphim with their appearance, but we'll likely get much more information about those in the future. The two that we did see that were sent to Amazon Lily, for example, had similarities to Dracule Mihawk and Boa Hancock during their childhood, so they could have the appearance but not the same power or mastery of a certain fighting style, especially in the case of Mihawk. Nonetheless, Seraphim Hancock was incredibly strong, but her fighting style wasn't similar to Hancock's. The former warlord uses the power of her devil fruit to petrify people and uses her melee kicks to then hit enemies that can dodge her arrows. However, the Seraphim version of Hancock only used lasers from her hand, just like the same lasers that the pacifista Kuma had, which means that the Seraphim may not have the ability to replicate or use devil fruit powers. But if you think about the natural abilities and techniques, they are capable of using them, and this was clearly demonstrated by the Seraphim Mihawk, who was able to cut a mountain in half with his sword, even though it was just a smaller scale version of Mihawk, who of course could do the same thing with his sword Yoru. In addition to that, they also have these distinct Lunarian characteristics. For example, they had dark skin, white hair, black wings, and a cloud of fire burning on their back, just like King's. So it's quite possible that they could also have other Lunarian traits, such as the ability to have great endurance or even speed, just like King demonstrated in his fight against Zoro on Onigashima. Another interesting trait is of course the star-shaped pupil that Seraphim Hancock had, while others might just have the pattern or appearance as the individual they were based on. For example, when we saw Seraphim Mihawk, he had eyes very similar to Mihawk, and this could be possibly due to the fact that Mihawk's eyes may be able to do something very special, since after all his nickname was Hawkeye, so this Seraphim doesn't have the same starry eye shape that Seraphim Hancock had. Another interesting piece that we learned is during the confrontation with Seraphim Mihawk, Teach noted like all pacifistas, the Seraphim have a designation PX marked on their chest, so that they can be identified as pacifistas or even SSG creations. And also, like the original pacifistas, the Seraphim perform their duties in a silent, robotic manner, acting brutally and destroying everything in their path if necessary. The Seraphim are very obedient, and if ordered to attack, they will do so just as they're told, although they're not going to care about the consequences or collateral damage that they may be caused while trying to accomplish that goal. This includes destroying any place or taking anyone's life during the execution of this order, not even seeming to spare their allies, because the command given to them is an absolute order, and for this reason, they do not measure or hold back on any of their efforts. Even Kobe, despite being a Marine captain and a member of SWORD, he apparently still had problems controlling them during the siege of Amazon Lily, implying that they may be more difficult to control than normal pacifista units, or at least they're designed to answer to only a very select few people when it comes to orders. The Seraphim also seem to be specifically designed to replace the former warlords, so it seems to be that they're a creation on the same level as all of the warlords put together, or perhaps an even higher ability than them, becoming a much more powerful and obedient weapon for the world government. Marine Admiral Fujitora, who was familiar with the project before its official deployment, was convinced that the Seraphim would be a great replacement for the warlords, considering them extremely useful and essential for battle. Now, as we said before, whether the Seraphim are cyborgs or just full-on robots, we do see that they can use weapons and laser launching and may even have more built-in equipment, which means that they could have even greater abilities for combat than we've even seen yet. Add on the fact that they can use things like swords or maybe even guns or other weapons. This means that the Seraphim are gonna have more than just the appearance of their warlord counterparts. When we get the opportunity to see other Seraphim that may be patterned after other warlords, we could see if their devil fruit abilities were replaced by lasers or other types of weapons to achieve the same end. For instance, the Dracule Mihawk-based Seraphim uses an incredibly great level of swordplay, just like Mihawk, although he isn't the same size and doesn't possess one of the great weapons like Mihawk's Yoru. And despite their diminished size, the Seraphim also show more than enough strength and skill to force even one of the four emperors, of course Teach, into a defensive position, right after effortlessly defeating a multitude of his subordinates. So as we can see, these Seraphim are incredibly powerful, and there may be even that possibility, the SSG creating Seraphim based on other powerful powerful pirates like the Yonko and this new generation of pirates, often referred to as the worst generation. If the world government had access to this inheritance or lineage factor or DNA, however you want to refer to it, this could cause the creation of even more powerful Seraphim and cause their ranks to increase. And this is pretty likely that these Seraphims are based on, of course, King's genetics, as we talked about before, but they may also be going after specific traits that the warlords have because they want to make the best of all worlds. And one other question we could ask is, how many other kinds of lineage factor or DNA does the world government possess? Because they could in fact even possess somebody like Law's DNA, enabling even more new Seraphims to be created. So hopefully in these next several chapters, we're going to get some better information about them, and we might even get to learn how they were created and how they possess so much strength, because apparently the Seraphim level may be limited since the Seraphim creation itself is based on the power of the pirate that they had been based on. But we also know that in the world of One Piece, there are many powerful pirates, and if the SSG can get a hold of whatever it is they use to base this first generation of Seraphim on, we know that there could be an even larger army of cyborgs trained for combat and may even be capable of taking out or taking on a Yonko. And although it at least appears right now that they weren't effective against Teach, it could have just been a way to test their power and they really weren't operating at full capacity. So we really don't yet know what level or how powerful these Seraphim fully are. But like this new generation, and even some of the ones that are based on ex-Warlord, these children were able to cause an immense amount of damage in very little time, and they might not have even been at their full strength. So this could end up being a very big problem for pirates in the future. But with all that said, my friends, we would love to know what you think about it. Do you think we're going to see Seraphim based on all of the 7 original Warlords? And also, do you think we could see something like a Seraphim based on Kaido or Big Mom? After all, we know that Kaido was captured by the world government multiple times, and if they're using King's inheritance factor or genetics or whatever we want to call it, could they be using Kaido's? Next, do you think that we could also see people like Law or Luffy or anyone else for that matter used by the SSG? When it comes down to it, we still don't know who this mysterious character Vegapunk is and how he fits into the whole story, although he does appear to be an incredibly integral part of the whole system. And finally, who do you think is really behind all of these Seraphim? I mean, we know that they came from SSG, but if Kobe couldn't command them on the battlefield, who do you think they're really taking their orders from? Do you think it goes as high as the Gorosei or even Im-sama? Or do you think it's Vegapunk himself? Let us know what you think in the comments below. But as we bring this video to a close, I want to thank you all so much for watching all the way up to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in other videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like or hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I really hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.